Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Stephen. I'm a traditionally published fantasy author. Today I'm going to do some fantasy news. This is book news for the next 12 months, some book deals that you might not know about and some interesting books that you should check out that are coming out this year. But before all of that, I'm going to start with some news about a free online science fiction and fantasy convention. This is TBRCon. I'll put a link down below. If you're watching this video from when it came out, the event starts on January the 23rd and runs through to January the 30th. It's available on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and there'll be panels broadcast live with a number of very big fantasy and science fiction authors. However, if you're watching this much later, don't worry, you can still catch up and watch all of the videos. There are about a dozen panels, and here are just some of the names of the people that are going to be involved. This isn't everybody, this is just some of them. So, David Dalgleish, Andrea Stewart, Joe Abercrombie, Richard Morgan, Anna Smith-Sparks, Peter McLean, Ben Galley, Angus Watson, Mike Shackle, Brian Naslund, Gareth Hanrahan, Tom Lloyd, Robert Hayes, C.L. Clarke, Evan Winter, Fonda Lee, Dirk Ashton, Mike Carey, R.J. Barker, Christian Cameron, Anna Stevens, Michael J. Sullivan, Peter Brett, Devon Madsen, Sam Hawke, Janny Wirtz, the great Janny Wirtz, and Adrian Tchaikovsky. So there's about 50 or 60 authors on this online convention. It's completely free, so check that out in the next few days, or if you're watching this much later, go and find it from the link below and you can watch back all of these panels. The next piece of news is about a new book deal. This is from Ed McDonald. His new trilogy starts with Gollancz this year, and the first book is called Daughter of Red Winter, and it comes out on the 30th of June. Before this, Ed McDonald did a trilogy called The Raven's Mark, and I've read the first two books. I've got the third book on my pile to read, and they're fantasy books unlike pretty much anything else out there on the market. They're sort of post-apocalyptic, western horror with magic, with spinners who channel moonlight into power to power the city for the energy. There's this huge wasteland called the Misery with all these weird creatures and things living in there, fighting each other. It's just really layered. There's lots and lots of stuff going on in the book and in the series. And some people say it's grimdark, but I would say it also has heart as well. And it's just a fantastic series. So the fact that he's got a new trilogy starting this year, I think you should definitely check it out. And if you haven't read his first trilogy, go and read that too. The next piece of news is Orbit has acquired a new trilogy from R.J. Barker. He previously did the Wounded Kingdom trilogy that started with Age of Assassins, and most recently he's just wrapped up his second trilogy that started with the Bone Ships and finished with the Bone Ships Wake. This is a brand new trilogy in a totally different world to the previous two that were also in separate ones. He's starting completely fresh, and the first book is coming out this year. The book will be published by Orbit UK and Orbit USA. We don't have a title yet, and I think it's going to come out somewhere around the summer. But all we know about this book so far is they're saying RJ will set his new tale within the bounds of a forest straight out of darkest folklore, with outlaws fighting an evil empire and warring deities. So as ever, RJ will bring something interesting and unique to his books because he has quite a unique voice within the genre. So definitely check out his previous books, and again, keep an eye out for this new book. So, a bit of industry news time. Some literary agents were recently surveyed, and they were asked about what they predict will be making up the bulk of the submissions over 2022. And they said they predicted joy with a dominant theme among submissions, with cozy crime, a renewed interest in historical fiction, and vampires. So, as a writer, if you're getting ready to submit something and you have a cozy crime novel, historical fiction, or vampire novel, now is probably a good time to do it. As ever, I always say never chase a trend, because anything that you try and suddenly start writing now, it might not be popular in 2 years, 3 years by the time it would actually come out. But if you have something ready, now is a good time to try and send it to a literary agent. Of course, this is just what they're predicting, and joy being a popular theme is not too surprising given the last 2 years we've had. However, of course, books outside of those three areas they're still interested in them. They're not saying you can't go for them, and this is just what they predict. Here's a prediction from me about something that I think is going to continue. In recent years, we have a lot of retellings, whether it's classical folklore and stories that have been modernised, whether it's taking an old story and twisting it, or whether it's taking a historical work of fiction from 50, 60, 70 or more years ago and bringing it up to date, changing genre or something. And we've had a lot of these. So this is not an exhaustive list. This is just what I've seen over the last few years. So we've had The Chosen and the Beautiful by Niveau, which was a queer Asian retelling of The Great Gatsby. These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong was an update of Romeo and Juliet. More to the Story by Hina Khan was Little Women, but this was with 4 Muslim Pakistani American sisters. That's a very different kind of story from what we had in the past. Legendborn by Tracy Dion was a King Arthur retelling with a female black lead. Once and Future by Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy. This was a YA science fiction King Arthur story. We've had A Blade So Black by L.L. McKinney, which was a Alice in Wonderland retelling. And Guild by Raven Kennedy, which is a King Midas inspired story. We've also had the Hannah Witten stories, which were things like For the Wolf, which was the first one, which was retelling a sort of classic Red Riding story. And there are more still to come. What Souls Are Made Of is a Wuthering Heights remix, which is coming out this year in the summer. On the 5th of July from Tasha Suri. So I predict we're going to see a lot more of these in the next 3, 5, 10 years, as long as someone can find something interesting and different and something we've not seen before, modernising the story, changing its genre from modern day into the space, into science fiction somewhere far away, whatever it might be. These kind of things I think will be continue to be popular, whether it's in fantasy, science fiction or YA novels. So that might be something else you could look at as a writer, or if you have something in that space, I think it's a good time to look at it. Final bit of book news is another book deal. Louise Carey's second book, Outcast, is coming out from Gollancz. This is the sequel to Inscape from last year, which is a cyberpunk dystopia. If you haven't heard of Louise Carey, you should definitely check out her work. Also, her father is Mike Carey. He has written comics and novels for a long time. Recently he's done the books of Coley for Orbit Books. Before that he's done books like The Girl with All the Gift. He's did the Felix Castor urban fantasy novels, which I love. He wrote Lucifer comics for DC many years ago. He wrote Hellblazer comics for DC as well. So he's been writing stories for decades, and she's been living in his house and soaking up all these stories. She wrote 2 novels with her parents when she was younger. She started writing comics when she was 15. So these are her first 2 debut novels of her own. So I definitely check her out because I think she's going to bring something really interesting, growing that kind of creative household. So I can't wait to get into this series. But yeah, book 2 is out at the moment, so go and take a look if you haven't read it already. So just something a bit brief today, a bit shorter, a bit of industry news and some predictions and some fantasy news. So I'll be back soon with another video.